Jody, excuse me, where's the raise your hand button?
So the raise your hand button should be at the bottom. So if you click on participants, you should have a white bar should pop up and it should list everybody's name. And then at the bottom of that, there should be the option to raise your hand.
Got it, thank you.
Are folks seeing that?
Yes, I got it, thank you.
Okay, so the next, thumbs up. So the next thing I want to draw your attention to is if you go back to the bottom of the screen, if you keep moving past chat, you get on the far right side, there's a little button called reactions. Reactions is really helpful because there's a thumbs up. So I'd love it if folks feel like they kind of understand how chat works and they see how they can raise their hand. Will you guys give me a thumbs up? Is anyone not understanding this? You could give me a thumbs down. Okay, that looks pretty promising. So that's sort of the quick overview of this Zoom platform. Are there any questions about this? Anyone want to raise your hand and ask a question about how this works? Okay. And again, if you feel more comfortable using the chat feature, then I think it's absolutely appropriate for you to type stuff into the chat and we can respond to you that way and get your questions and comments that way. So with that, I want to move on to introductions. So I want to give everybody a couple minutes to introduce themselves and just tell us your name, where you're from or where you live in the state. And then also if you could tell us about a recent outdoor experience that made you forget that we were in a pandemic. So I can start. I'm Jody Kennedy. I am the Public Involvement and Planning Specialist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I'm based in Denver. I'm from Colorado, or I moved to Colorado when I was 1. So I consider myself a Coloradan. And I have been with Colorado Parks and Wildlife for about 6 years now, and I really enjoy staffing the Roundtable. It is definitely one of the highlights of my job, and it's really great to see you guys tonight. So thank you for joining us and for joining us virtually. So a recent outdoor experience that I've had outdoors is I actually got a chance to visit with family in the mountains earlier this week, and I got to see a bull moose, and I think it was maybe one of the biggest bull moose I had ever seen, and he just was hanging out for a good part of a day. He was sort of in and out and around, and that was pretty exciting, and I really appreciated that I could be out of the city and have a little space and not have to wear a mask and enjoy nature. So that's me. So I'm just going to go around and click on folks as their picture pops up on my screen. So with that, I'm going to start with Katie Lanter.
Hi, I'm Katie Lanter. I'm Policy and Planning Supervisor for Colorado Parks and Wildlife based in Denver. And recent outdoor experience, I did do the Gem Lake Trail hike in Estes Park. And so that was a nice way to get out of doors and some fresh air.
Great, thanks. Next is Willie Kolaski.
Hi, everybody. I'm Willie Kolaski. I'm a retired Air Force. I did 28 years, and I'm just a retired volunteer now. I try to do as much as I can for the outdoors. I'm based out of Colorado Springs, and I was one of 2 Southeast regional representatives to the Sportsman's Roundtable. Recent event, I guess, a recent one is getting my boat out of my garage and getting my son and granddaughter on the boat down at Pueblo Reservoir and up at 11 Mile and down in John Martin, and just getting my granddaughter interested in fishing. So that's a great experience for me.
Great, thanks. All right, next on my screen, I have Ron Goodrich.
I'm Ron Goodrich from Pueblo. I was spent 5 years on the Sportsman's Roundtable as a statewide delegate, and now represent the Southeast region. You can probably, if you talk to Brett about me, I kind of speak my mind as I see fit for the sportsman, try to do everything I can. I'm also treasurer of a group called Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. And we actually helped prepare, had presentation at a couple commission meetings ago on the North American model, and we help any way we can. Recent outdoor, 3 weeks ago, spent about 4 days up in area 67 at a little over 10,000 feet. It was nice, very few people, just family, grandkids, played baseball with them. It was wonderful. Got out of town.
Great. Thank you, Ron. All right, next I've got Trent Peterson.
Yeah, I'm Trent Peterson. I'm from the Northeast. I live in a small town called Marino, near Sterling. I guess a recent outdoor experience I had, me and my wife just went on a honeymoon to Maine and pretty much spent the whole time striper fishing and smallmouth bass fishing. And the travel obviously reminded us that the coronavirus was there, but then just having that time to just unwind away from everything was really nice. So yeah.
Great. Next, I've got Kim Kokesh. Did I pronounce that right?
Okay, my name is Kim Kokesh. I live in Austin, which is just east of Delta, Colorado on the West Slope. And I've been actively involved in several organizations locally. And then as far as forgetting the virus, I had to actually come off the hill today. I'd been up camping on the Uncompadre Plateau for the last 4 days and had to run home to clean up and join this meeting this evening. So that I'm here and I'm glad to be with this roundtable. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. All right, next I've got Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. I'm Charlie Garcia. I'm a Parks and Wildlife Commissioner. I'm a sportsman's representative on the commission. Been on the commission, this is now my 3rd year. And I'm an avid fly fisherman. I have a home up in Grand County as well as here in Denver. So I'm a member of the Headwaters chapter of Trout Unlimited. Do a lot of fly fishing up in that area. And I'm an avid upland bird hunter. And I am the proud owner of my 4th generation golden retriever. She's a puppy, and my biggest challenge right now, in addition to normal bird dog training, is getting her to be steady in a canoe. So welcome, good to see everyone, thank you.
And has the golden retriever dumped you in the water yet?
Not yet, but she's come close. We're staying in very shallow water.
Sounds fun. All right, next on my screen, I have Eric, and is it Meyer? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
It's actually Myrie. So hey everyone, Eric Myrie. I actually was born and raised in Wisconsin and relocated to Colorado about 20 years ago now. So I currently live just across the street from Golden Gate State Park at about 9,000 feet, where we have winters that last about 11 months of the year. And I actually work in the hunting and fishing retail industry, and I'm pretty actively involved in conservation as well, some of the conservation groups. I'm an extremely avid hunter and angler myself. Consider myself happiest when I'm outside doing those things. And definitely looking forward to this. I'm a new member of the roundtable, so I'm looking forward to participating in the group. And in terms of recent outdoor experience, in June, so not too recent, but back in June, I took my 8-year-old daughter and my wife on my daughter's first backpacking trip, where she carried her own backpack up into the Sangre de Cristo wilderness above the sand dunes. And she enjoyed it. And so I think that planted a good seed for future trips. So.
Excellent. All right, next I've got Aaron Jones.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Jones from Southern Colorado, the southernmost part of the San Luis Valley, a little south of Antonito, Colorado. I grew up in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, went to New Mexico State University, got a degree in biology and fisheries management. I've been a property manager for over 30 years now, and I manage a big private ranch that's in both New Mexico and Colorado. It's about 18,000 acres. And I'm also a part of other organizations, started an organization called the Chama Peak Land Alliance, which brings landowners together on different conservation issues and land management issues. And as far as an outdoor experience that helps me forget COVID, I would say every day is an outdoor experience for me that helps me forget COVID, because sometimes I have to remind myself that it even exists, because where I work and where I'm at, I'm outdoors every day, usually just by myself or with 1 or 2 crew members and my dog. And I love fishing and hunting and spending time in the outdoors. So I'm glad to be here and be part of the team.
Excellent. Thanks, Aaron. Next, I've got Mark Schofield. Mark, it looks like you're on mute. So if you missed the intro in the beginning, mute is the little button at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side.
All right. Mark Schofield is my name. I am a representative to the Roundtable from the Southeast region. My home is in Colorado Springs, but due to the COVID unpleasantness, I have the luxury of spending this summer in between Antero Reservoir and the Buffalo Peaks Wilderness area. I'm involved with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Project, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wilderness Society, and an awful lot of conservation groups. My latest adventure away from COVID was a little stroll. I tried to climb East Buffalo Peak, which is not a climb as much as a hike, about a week ago. And the monsoon chased me down, but not until I got a great view of everything that you can see from 13,000 feet in the Buffalo Peaks Wilderness. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is a good story. Thank you. All right, next I've got Chloe.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chloe Lamprey. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but I'm originally from Nevada. I also, just like everybody here, love the outdoors. If I'm not hunting or fishing or hiking, I'm probably trying to raft or try some other new outdoor activity and get into trouble. But most recently, a little moment I had where I really got to forget the pandemic and just felt really awesome was me and my husband were up in Grand Teton National Park, and we took a raft out onto Jackson Lake and got to just spend the day out rafting around, doing a little fishing, and it was just a blast to get away and just totally feel separated from all that. So I'm really happy to be on this board.
That sounds beautiful. All right, next, Sarah Studebaker.
Hi, everybody. I am the CBW Policy and Planning Associate. Born in Austin, Texas, but been in Arvada or Lakewood since I was about 6. I think a good forgetting COVID moment for me was camping a few weeks ago at Red Feather Lakes. We got poured and hailed on, and I just thought that little mini chaos was one thing that just completely took my mind off of sort of otherworldly problems, and I really appreciated it, and it was a beautiful, clear night after that. So nice to be in here with you all. And sorry, real quick, I guess I'll just point out that I am posting the link to the YouTube streaming if anyone is interested in watching that or sharing it out with their networks.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. And Sarah is helping us moderate this call tonight too. So thank you, Sarah, for that. So next I have Dion Call.
Caught me by surprise.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, thanks for including me. I too am helping facilitate this Zoom conference today, and thank you all for doing this virtually. I know we'd like to be in person, but this is a good alternative. My most recent wildlife thing that happened was just a couple days ago, cooking some breakfast, looked out my front door, and we had a baby fawn right in the driveway. Mom not close behind, but she was lurking, and that was a neat way to start the day. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dion. Dion is our technology brains of our agency, and it's thanks to him that we are up and operating on Zoom and yeah, are working as effectively as we are during this pandemic. So thanks, Dion. Next, I've got Doug Vilsack.
Thank you, Jody. Thanks everybody for having me. I'm Doug Vilsack, Assistant Director of Parks, Wildlife, and Lands at DNR. Happy to be able to join up on this call. I've missed the last couple. In terms of kind of outdoor experiences, I was up at we kind of share a cabin up in South Park, and was up there a couple weekends ago, and thanks to my friends at Onyx, which I'm sure many of you use as well, found out that there was a little piece of public land and a little trout stream I had never seen before, despite going down that road many times. And so spent a good day on a new trout stream with a good friend of mine a few weeks ago. So that was a good escape.
Great, thanks, Doug. Next is Lauren Truitt.
Find my mute button. Lauren Truitt, I'm the Assistant Director for Information and Education with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Happy to be here and listen to the conversation. Got to spend about 6 days with my family at Taylor Reservoir about 3 weeks ago. So it was just nice to be completely off the grid, cell phone-less, technology-less, and away from the media and everything else that was going on in the world. So appreciate the inclusion on the conversation.
Great, next is Heather Dugan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Dugan. I'm an Assistant Director for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I oversee the Field Services branch, and fifth generation Coloradan. So my latest experience was spending a week up at Steamboat Lake State Park with my husband and our 3 kids. We have 15-year-old twins and an 11-year-old. And we hiked and we biked and we paddleboarded. And my next adventure that I'm planning, the next major one, is hunting with my 15-year-old son. It's nice to see everyone today.
Great, thanks. Next is Randy Hampton.
Hi, everybody. I'm Randy Hampton, Public Information Officer for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife's Northwest region. Started in the Northwest region back in 2003, did a few other things for the agency, and then took a 6-year vacation and lived in Hawaii, which was spectacular. Came back to the agency in March and very excited to be back in the Northwest region. Love it. Think it's the greatest part of the world. And yes, I would trade Hawaii in for Northwest Colorado any day. I get to do outdoor stuff every single day with this agency, and it's absolutely amazing. And I've been really enjoying getting out to all the state parks and seeing the properties and the state wildlife areas and all of the things in Northwest. So every day is a good break to get away from the cell signal. Happy to be here and love hearing all of your stories. So thank you.
Thanks. Next is Commissioner Blecca.
Hi, thank you. Betsy Blecca. I'm a Sportspersons representative from Eastern Colorado. I live in Ray, and my recent outdoor adventure was that I took one of my closest girlfriends shooting for the first time in preparation for turkey hunting. So super excited about that. So thanks.
Fabulous. All right, next is Corey Chick.
Hey, thanks, Jody. Corey Chick, Southwest Region Manager here out of Durango. Last weekend was able to take the family up to Browns Lake State Wildlife Area, get them outdoors, and how it could ever happen, but was able to get both kids being as quiet as they never are, about 30, 40 yards from a bull that was up there on the side of the hill bedding. So good weekend, and was able to get outdoors as I often do. So, but thanks, and it's good to see everyone.
Great. So next I've got Brandon Sagrillo. I might be pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry.
Sagrillo, yeah.
So Brandon, I know you joined a little bit late, but we're doing introductions and we're asking for name, where you're from, and then also to tell us quickly about an outdoor experience where you forgot that we were in the pandemic.
Oh, well, my name is Brandon Sagrillo. I'm from Grand Junction. I work as an energy specialist for an oil and gas company out here. And I try my best to forget we're in a pandemic every day. I would have to say, last weekend we traveled for lacrosse tournaments, and it was kind of good to get back to normalcy, not have to worry about wearing a mask everywhere and staying 6 feet away from everybody, and kind of get back into some sports and stuff like that, and kind of realize we're still living in this world.
Okay, thanks. Next, we've got Brett Ackerman.
Well, I was hoping I would make it just a little while longer, Jody, as I'm experiencing the great outdoors right now. So I am just a short way from my destination. Had some meetings that went late, so I apologize. But I'm Brett Ackerman. I'm our Southeast Region Manager. Been with the division about 20 years. Did have the opportunity last week to go out to our newest state park, Fisher State Peak, to check some trail alignments with some folks that are friends of mine, and also folks that I met for the first time. So thrilled to be here, and will be sedentary.
Okay, well, thanks, Brett. Next is JT Ramatsky.
Hey everybody, JT Ramatsky. I'm the Northwest Regional Manager over here in Grand Junction. Nice to hear all of you guys. I wish we were there together. Appreciate everything. I'm trying to think of, I'll be honest, licking right outside of my house at the Pine Gulch Fire that's about 30,000 acres now, and being out around this will make you forget about a pandemic really quickly, unfortunately. Although I would much rather trade that for an opportunity to watch Commissioner Garcia and his dog in a canoe. So I'm thinking of that and forgetting the pandemic right now.
Excellent. Next is Jeff Versteeg.
Thanks, Jody. Is my mute working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm having a little video problem today, so I got my camera on, but it doesn't show me. But trust me, I'm there, and you're better off anyway. With Parks and Wildlife, I'm the Assistant Director for Research, Policy, and Planning. And what I did recently to forget about the pandemic was my family had a reservation for Rocky Mountain National Park, and we went up there on the weekend and went wildlife watching and spent a few hours hiking up at Alpine, looking for fresh air. And we got smoke from JT's part of the country up there in the Rocky Mountain National Park. So that's what we have happen over here on the Front Range when we get fires on the west slope. Probably Glenwood's a part of that too. But anyway, it was great that their process limits park visitation, so you could actually drive around and find places to park with no trouble at all, and there are very few people on the trails, so you didn't need a mask. It was great.
Sounds nice. Next, I've got Ryan Britton.
Hello, I'm Ryan Britton. I'm in the southeast area. My home is near Haswell, Colorado. I farm full time, and my house is in the middle of a field, so I get to look out every day and see antelope and deer and coyotes and everything imaginable. I spent a couple weeks ago, I was up in the White River National Forest near Buford and seen a ton of elk and 4 moose, so that was pretty neat. But otherwise, I'm down here in the only county without any COVID cases, and you know, nothing's really changed since the start of the whole thing down here. So I feel sorry for you guys that have had to deal with all of it.
Yeah, maybe we should just all come out there. All right, next I've got Roy Carroll.
Oh, thanks, Jody. Good to see you all here today. I'll turn on the video too. You can see how pretty I look. I know some of the things that I just did this last week. My wife, Kathy, and I went up to Grand Mesa, and we caught enough brook trout to have supper and spent the all afternoon up there. We know that they are hitting prince nymphs up there in the lakes. And I live in Grand Junction, been in Colorado my whole life. And tomorrow I'm getting ready to move my elk hunting camp and set up for guiding hunters in Unit 61 down here in Uncompahgre. So be doing that and enjoying life, I think, my retired life.
Sounds nice. Next, we've got Mark Leslie.
Hi, everybody. Mark Leslie, Northeast Region Manager for CPW. I'm a Colorado native, and I've started with the Division of Wildlife in 1986, worked for Parks and Wildlife now as a Northeast Region Manager. And I try to get out and do a lot of hiking every week. And I've been spending quite a bit of time on our state parks and wildlife areas in the Northeast region, kind of trying to find out what the impacts are and seeing all the people out enjoying our outdoor resources. So I'm really happy to be here and look forward to a good meeting. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mark. And next I've got Emily Orbanek. And Emily, we can't hear you, so you
Emily,
may
you could do *6 to unmute your phone.
Thanks, Dion. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We got you.
Okay. *6, that's the trick. Thanks, Jody. Emily Orbanek. I was born and bred in Grand Junction, but live in Denver now. One day, hopefully sooner rather than later, I'll be back on the Western Slope. Like all of you, spent a lot of time outside this summer, but it's hard to forget that there's a pandemic going on. I guess my recent outdoor experience that really took my mind off it was downloading Taylor Swift's new album and listening to it around a campfire in southern Wyoming. And I thought one of the regional managers was going to have that one too, but glad that you guys saved it for me. Grew up in fishing and I've caught lots of brook trout this summer too. So excited to be here.
Thanks, Emily. Sounds fun. All right, I think that's everyone. I'm gonna turn it over to our director for him to introduce ourselves and himself and give a welcome. But before I do, were there any roundtable members or other members on the Zoom who didn't get a chance to introduce themselves? Okay, great. I think we got everyone. Also, just want to remind you all that if you click on your participants box and the chat box, you can sort of see everyone on the right-hand side, and you can use those tools to communicate if you like. You can raise your hand if you'd like to talk. And then you can also use that chat feature if you have a comment or a question that you want to type in, and then we can read it out loud. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Prenzo.
All right. Thank you, Jody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I took off my good shirt, put on a t-shirt, my outdoor moments. I'm on my deck having a beer and a cigar. I've had a long day. So I'm really glad everybody's on this call. So Jody and I and staff talked a lot about, should we try and do a pandemic Zoom call on a Saturday in the middle of summer? And we decided, and you voted to do the evening. So I would say get an iced tea or get a beer, get a water. I don't care, but we tried not to ruin one of your days, Saturday weekends, so you can spend your time outdoors. And it sounds like most of you accomplished that last weekend, and maybe hopefully this upcoming weekend. So I'm happy about that. That might be the only successful plan of the day. So good for you. Now, Ryan, I think it was McCabe. I have two questions or one thought for you. I have not met you. Did you say Haswell or Hasty? Or did I miss that? And what county is that doesn't have COVID? It's the last one standing.
I'm in Haswell.
Haswell.
It's Kiowa County.
Kiowa County. All right. My friends at Kiowa
Yes,
County. All right. And the owners of Queens Reservoir. Thank you. Secondly, I own a home just outside of Buford still. That's where I call home, but I live in Denver. Now I have Emily Urbanic disease. I want to be on the West Slope, but I'm in Denver. So congratulations to the new members on this board. I appreciate everybody on this board and staff willing to take their time. As you well know, we don't pay well. Matter of fact, we don't pay at all. Save you a little travel on this trip. We usually like to buy you lunch and a good Coke, but you know, COVID is COVID, and sounds like most of you are managing around, getting outside and not trying to have it disrupt your life more than it has to, which is, I would try and resemble that remark myself. So business continues on. And again, I think in my tenure, I've been with the old Division of Wildlife and now Parks and Wildlife since, well, Mark Leslie and I were in the same trainee class, that'll tell you, 34 years. All of it's been a pleasure. Some days are more fun than others. And I would tell you it's a passion of mine. And one of the other sub-passions are groups like this that are external to the agency, that are we have the ability to listen to what's going on the ground. I hear a lot, but I don't claim to ever hear everything of what's going on. The undertow, the overtow, the psyche of what's going on in Colorado. Like Roy talked about, he's going to be an outfitter. Or, you know, Commissioner Garcia or Blecca here's from you know, constituents left and right. And all of you, you know, I forget the person that's the land manager there in Antonito or Southern Valley, you'll have a different take on things than the northern part of the state. So that's really important to me. It's important. I appreciate the regional manager. I think most of them got a regional meeting pulled off in this COVID. It's hard to do. Zoom is not fun, but the good news is you get to have extra people on there. And so I'm pretty sure, thanks to Jody, we're YouTubing this today, so people can't call in, but they can listen in, and then maybe the you members will get a call or two about what's going on in the state of Colorado. So I can talk forever. I do miss seeing everybody in person. That's important to me. I get energy from a room of people, and so I'll just have to do without. So I think Jody wanted me to cover a couple things. Is this when you want me to do that, Jody?
Yeah, please, that would be great.
Okay, great, thanks. So anyway, obviously welcome, thank you. Thanks for donating your time to the wildlife and Parks and Wildlife of this state. And we are the stewards of your wildlife resources, so it really is yours. We've had lots of interesting commission meetings in COVID. We got another one coming in September. I could talk and maybe you'll have some questions I'll be glad to answer. So I don't want to cover a bunch of ground. I know a lot of people call in on those. If you don't, I would tell you from a sportsman's perspective, at least look at the agenda on those commission meetings and kind of cherry pick on parts of that. You can stream in and listen to that. That's where, you know, they are our governing board or policy setting board, you know, obviously governor appointed, Senate approved commission, and that's where the rubber hits the road. I get to run the agency as best as I can, and the commission gets to set policy. We have a good commission. We work hard at that. It's harder in COVID. We have the same problem, you know, get to meet and cuss and discuss out in the hall and interact with sportsmen and women and park users, etc. So plug into those commission meetings. But a couple of things that are going on, maybe we'll talk about, may come up later. We've got a kind of a West Slope mountain lion plan. It's really an amalgamation of what we're doing already with some changes. It's getting a lot of scrutiny only really because the word mountain lion. I'm pretty sure the biological portion of that's pretty strong, but if you say the word predator in the state of Colorado, you are gearing up for a discussion. So you might pay attention to that. We had one meeting in July. It was an informational meeting, answered a lot of questions and thoughts. And the September meeting will be a decision meeting. So we'll see. We got some work to do on that. We also in I think maybe January was the start. Brett Ackerman can remind me. And Brett and I were in the same meeting. I just got to drive home faster than he did. So we have made a regulation through the commission to require hunting or fishing licenses right now for access to state wildlife areas. As I like to say, we've been really proud as an agency to have, you know, use on those for anybody, but we're past the point. We've got 6 million residents and about 2 million visitors any day of the summer or winter. And our properties are getting loved to death, and they're single purpose properties. Those are bought by sportsmen and women for wildlife use. We don't mind sharing, never have, probably never will, but can't have completely unfettered and unpaid use. So we took that little thing by the horns, and we started in January. We made the regulation in April, and unless you're in a cave, you'll see and read about a little bit. There's people that don't appreciate what we've done and are asking for some changes to that. We are looking at some changes, but we really, and I do really appreciate the commission kind of gently but firmly towing in on that. This is an important, we can't have unfettered and unpaid access on properties that really need to provide for the primary use, which is wildlife habitat and wildlife recreation. And it's great when we can have other things on those properties, but they really cannot be detrimental to that use, and nor really should there really be free rides for anybody anymore, because sportsmen have been paying conservation bills since the North American model. So those are a couple things, lots of other issues going on, but any questions, I'll be glad to take on it. One of the questions in the next commission meeting that was asked by a citizen was about the resident, non-resident allocation of big game licenses. and we've not changed. Jeff could help me on this for Stieg, but it seems like mid 90s or mid 2000s maybe. But we have the kind of the 80-20 list of groups where they're for 80% resident, 20% non-resident, and we hadn't changed those numbers because it gets very complicated and it changes each year depending on preference points, anything above 5 or 6 preference points. So we are going to take a look at that. We're going to do a history lesson. The commission's asked us to look at that. Pretty complicated system. Anytime you start talking about preference points, allocation, who gets what, you're really talking about picking winners and losers, and I'd rather not pick winners and losers as best we can, but that's really what a preference point system does, or allocation does. So we're going to try and tread lightly, learn a lot of history before we wade into that, but there's definitely some questions about that, and so that we're glad to look at that. So that's one coming up I would suggest you pay a little attention to on the commission meeting, and you'll probably have an opinion as a sportsman's group. So maybe with that, I don't want to prattle on for too long, but again, welcome. Thank you. Sportsman's meeting are very, very important to us. And thanks for being willing to serve.
Thank you, Director Prenzo. So I don't see any hand raises at this moment. So we are going to move on. Next on our agenda is Doug Vilsack. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Jody. I was in the same meeting with Brett and Dan, and I guess it's Director Prenslow's experience to know he needs to get in the car and drive home immediately from a meeting like that so he can be having a beer on his front porch. I did not make that choice, so hopefully I'll follow your lead here in a minute, Director. So just a few additional updates from DNR. Obviously, the last 4 or 5 months have been really preoccupied with COVID-19 and kind of addressing the impacts of COVID in state government. And really, I've been watching kind of news reports over the last few months, and I think Director Prenzel would say too, kind of how proud we are to have kept pretty much everything open and kind of been able to maintain here in the state kind of all the work we do around wildlife and parks and recreation. I think other states have not fared nearly as well, and I think part of that has been just because of the diligence of CPW and folks working to make sure we keep places open when people want to get outdoors, and frankly, a very supportive governor wanted to make sure that people keep having these opportunities. So that's certainly been the theme the last few months working on these types of things. I think just in terms of COVID-19 recently, I think everybody watches the news. We are kind of creeping back up there again and are now seeing some good kind of numbers again, hopefully, as we get into the hunting season this fall. I think that's always something we've been thinking about, and I think something Dan's been thinking about since the very beginning here, just making sure that we have a good hunting season this fall. Obviously that's been the theme, but life continues on. We've been having a lot of conversation these days. And I think we're going to talk more on this call just about kind of increased recreation usage and kind of impacts around the state. We have weekly calls now with our federal land management partners, just kind of discussing the impacts of increased and different new use and how to deal with those, not only in the short term and trying some messaging to try to get out to people, but also, in the long term, because usually when people get outdoors and experience these places, they probably are going to keep getting outdoors. So working a lot on that these days. And again, as well, lots of kind of action in DNR and kind of with our recreation partners on the federal front, kind of lots of things happening. We should see an Eastern Colorado resource management plan here pretty soon from the BLM. So we're looking forward to that and seeing how that impacts our hunting and fishing opportunities. Just kind of elsewhere in DNR as impacts sportsmen and this agency. Obviously the state is experiencing significant drought at this time. This is the first time we now are 100% officially in drought across the state, which impacts our management of properties, but also, of course, wildlife. And then finally, one of the big things we're working on these days, among many things, is the Senate Bill 181 oil and gas rulemaking. Huge implications for wildlife in those rulemakings. Right now, the kind of health and safety component of those rulemakings are happening here at the end of August and kind of early September. So really focusing on some of the issues around oil and gas development communities, those types of things. But very soon after that, the Oil and Gas Commission, which has newly been reseated, will turn to wildlife and the 1200 series and addressing the impacts of oil and gas on wildlife. And so a lot of action on that front, a lot of action this fall, and things that we've been working on. So happy to follow up on any of those points or other things, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of those issues over the next couple days.
Great, thank you, Doug. So next on our agenda, we are going to talk about outdoor recreation. And for those of you who've been on the roundtable for a while know that our agendas kind of come together jointly based on what's going on with us at the agency, and then also what are issues that you all bring up that you'd like to talk about in outdoor recreation. Was one of those issues that we heard from you, I think in part because you're seeing kind of increased pressure on the landscape and are wondering how CPW is responding. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Director Penzo, if you'd like to add something, Director, and then also Lauren Truitt are going to talk to us a bit about outdoor recreation and what CPW is doing.
I'll actually just let Lauren go. I've had enough. I'll give her a chance to wow the crowd.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys as everybody has realized the impact of outdoor recreation in Colorado has both positive and negative effects, as we're seeing on our state wildlife areas and state trust lands, but also just for the sheer volume of economic outputs that the recreation industry brings to Colorado's economy. It is something that CPW is at the forefront of a lot of these conversations. COVID has added some complications, but also some really good opportunities in this conversation with outdoor recreation, as many people have found refuge in the outdoors from home quarantines and homeschooling kids and trying to work and manage life. We are seeing incredible droves of people going outside. Our state parks, just in sheer numbers, from probably March till July, are seeing at least 1 million more visitations across the entire system, and upwards of 2 to 2.5 million increased visitations from last year. We also saw that with our hunting licenses and applications, and as many of you probably have already heard, we had a 40,000 person and applicant increase this year through the big game draw. I attribute a lot of that to empty store shelves. It's too early for us to truly tell if that was a lot of recruitment of new hunters. My hunch of looking at the data and where we were in the cycle of the application process tells me it's a lot of probably reactivated hunters, people who may have given up the sport or had not been involved for a while, coming back into the outdoors in a way that trying to provide for their families. So some of what I would like to get input from you guys, and Jody, I don't want to derail your agenda, so maybe we can collect information or ideas from the group through email. But one of the big things that I'm working on with my team is, how do we keep these hunters? How do we keep people engaged in the conversation of wildlife management, recreation impacts? How do we balance the needs of both our lands, wildlife, and waters with the needs of the people? And I'd be really interested in hearing some of your guys' feedback on what that could look like to make sure that this additional 40,000 people coming back into our system stay a part of the conversation. But what we also did see, which is very encouraging, is as we had to transition to all online hunter education, the commission also approved the extension by 1 year of the apprentice license to allow people the opportunity to get into hunting. So one of the things that the Hunter Ed team is doing right now is really collating that data and seeing what kind of an increase from the apprentice licenses that we've seen versus last year and previous years, as well as just the sheer numbers of younger adults that came through our Hunter Education program. And what was really encouraging about this year is we saw a big spike of engagement between 25-year-olds and 45-year-olds. It was the largest peak of that age group that we've seen across the system. Really big numbers in fishing in particular, but also our hunting applicant numbers peaked really well through that age group, which is also really encouraging for the continuation of hunting heritage and the legacy of wildlife conservation. So again, Jody, I'm not sure how you'd like to handle the input piece, but I'd be open to people's thoughts. What that looks like as we go forward, as you guys are all aware, we have a finite resource, but we need advocates. We need people talking about wildlife management and the importance of the habitat and the landscape to Colorado's recreation economy. So as we're seeing historic levels of visitation, we also need people to understand how that impact really can cripple a system, but it can also be its biggest voice for protection. So we're working on all of our communication channels to promote responsible recreation. As many of our region managers can attest, the trash, I don't want to say lawlessness, but people going around barriers of closures and not paying attention to social distancing certainly added some challenges to our already burdened system. And so as we've moved through the summer, we have really focused our messaging on leave no trace principles, just to help people understand, if they haven't been in the outdoors their entire lives or they're new to the outdoors, how they can minimize their impact, but also how they can recreate responsibly in these spaces and make sure that we're distributing that recreation pressure across the board and not trying to focus it in certain areas. As you guys can all imagine, our metro areas are hardest hit just because of sheer population size. So we're also looking at ways that we can disperse that recreation pressure across both our federal partners and our local municipalities. So happy to answer any questions, but brief overview of where we are from March to now.
Thanks, Lauren. So does anyone have like questions or comments or thoughts in response to what Lauren is asking? I see that we have one comment in the chat box from Roy Carroll suggesting that folks check out the Rocky Mountain Club app for recreation site reports.
Fantastic, thank you.
Are there other comments or chats, or anyone want to chime in? Again, your mute is in kind of the lower left-hand corner, and you can click that on and off. Or up, I see Eric. Eric raised his hand. Eric, you want to go ahead?
Jody, I raised my hand, but I guess you didn't go through. I guess the question to Lauren is, based on what I read about New Mexico and what their governor passed, is there anything on the horizon now that would cause cancellation of any hunting season due for any reason, like scared counties, like happened during turkey season with Yuma County? Anything that's on the horizon that may be because of the high school sports got canceled, pro sports got canceled, and many things got moved around?
And so I'll also turn this to the director, since he has a more direct line to the governor, but it's not something that we've heard yet. Luckily, Colorado Governor Polis is very supportive of getting outdoors and understands that hunting is by nature kind of a seclusion experience. So I haven't heard anything, but Director Prunzo might have additional information I might not have.
Thanks, Lauren. Good question. I have not either. I know, it depends on the schools going back, et cetera, et cetera. I have heard, I actually just heard today, New Mexico has a 14-day quarantine on big game hunters from out of state unless you're with an outfitter. And I'm real distressed about that. Although I might nicely say, and I forgot the new member's name that's straddles Colorado and New Mexico. You might have a thought on that, but New Mexico caved in on all their parks and closed all parks and closed everything. I thought they had, way too draconian of a way to deal with that. So this doesn't really surprise me, but I'm not crowing either. You never say never, but as Lauren said, this governor has been very open about being people getting outside and working through that. So I'm not going to say there won't be some counties, but I've not heard of them yet. And I think it'll depend. People now have kind of figured out you just can't shut everything down. So, and hope for the best. So you got to kind of work through it. So I think it will be important this group pay attention to that though, because you could be a voice in that arena.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So Eric Myrie, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as I mentioned, I live right across the street from Golden Gate State Park, and I use it as my backyard. So I run in there or hike. I'm there almost every day, and I can say, kind of just to corroborate what you guys have been seeing from a visitation standpoint. Some of the ponds there, the traffic at the ponds for the number of people fishing are at record levels from what I've seen over the past 20 years. I've never seen it as crowded as I have, especially during the beginning of the summer. It started to trail off a little bit now, but I mean, completely full parking lots and every part of the shoreline full of families fishing, which is on one hand good to see, but there definitely is increased use. And I'm also seeing a lot more mountain bikers on the trails, as well as even horse use with people beyond people just hiking as well. Going and also working in like I mentioned, the hunting and fishing retail industry, definitely saw an explosion going into the early summer with a lot of people picking up fishing that weren't previously fishing. And it also seems like people that have been fishing for a long time have definitely upped their participation and spent a lot more time in the rivers. I know I've been seeing on forums and things like that, that a lot of our rivers, such as, maybe Deckers, a lot of the South Platte drainages have seen a very high number of anglers, especially during the weekends. So again, just to kind of corroborate what you've already been saying. On the hunter recruitment side, that's great to hear that we've got an increase in new hunters. I think for that age class, there's a lot of technology these days that make it much easier to learn how to hunt. Back when I was growing up, you kind of had to have a family member show you the ropes, or maybe a close family friend. It just wasn't accessible. But now with the advent of things like YouTube, and that's the type of media that these younger age folks are consuming, that information is more accessible, and they can go out and try it on their own. And there's a lot of good content creators out there these days that are putting out content like, Randy Newberg, Brian Call, Born and Raised Outdoors crew that are utilizing even, hunts in Colorado on our public lands and showing people how to do these things. So I think that is probably part of it as well. That is just they're creating content that is hitting that demographic right where they consume that content the most. So.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is that we're finally in a space that we can get good information to people who maybe didn't grow up with a mentor. And what we've seen is that mentorship is critical to the successful continuation of a hunter in particular. So I am encouraged with seeing the quality of content. And that's something that I think we strive to do, but we can't be everywhere. And so it's leveraging partners and people in that space to also help project that message. So.
And I think to help keep that recruitment level high and make sure they keep coming back year to year, it's going to come down to their success level, which, from a hunting standpoint, generally is not always that high. Maybe some of your rifle seasons there is, but generally, it's not a high percentage. So giving them the most opportunities possible, whether it's, you know, doe and cow tags and things like that, where there maybe will be a higher percentage of success, I think is key in those first couple of years, so people don't get frustrated and hang it up.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that.
All right, so I see that Aaron Jones also has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Yeah, just to the director's comment, you know, on the New Mexico, going back to the New Mexico border here, you know, New Mexico has made it difficult for people to recreate in that state, and being right on the border between Pagosa and Alamosa here, we have seen such a high increase in usage in our area. People from not only New Mexico, but people that would typically recreate from Texas, other states, are all kind of navigating right into the Colorado side of the border here. And, you know, I just think that it's something that we're going to have to watch, like somebody else mentioned earlier. You know, once you kind of learn an area as well, not only getting out, but once you learn an area and you start to recreate in that area, it kind of becomes a place that you'll return to. And I'm kind of curious about hunting season, and would ask, you know, the Division of Wildlife to kind of keep an eye on Unit 81 as well, which is my stomping grounds here. I know just this will be the first year that the west side of the Continental Divide over towards Pagosa, Unit 78 has gone from to a limited draw. And so I was already kind of anticipating that there's going to be an increase of hunters coming over to the west side or the east side of the Continental Divide into 80 and 81. And on top of that, with New Mexico doing what they're doing and the increased recreation that we're seeing this year, I'm kind of wondering what those impacts would be to Unit 81, and just asking that the division keep a close eye on that.
I appreciate that.
I think that's a good point. Yeah,
Sorry.
great. Sorry, Director Prenzlow, that's a great point. I think we're going to have some of that anyway. So I said, I think that's one of the synergies of this group, is just kind of hearing from all around. We, you know, our regional managers and area supervisors out there, field people, hear some of that. But as you see some of that and you observe some of that, I mean, it's kind of a strange new world for all of us. But you know, it did impact us this spring. I mean, Navajo Reservoir was a good one. New Mexico closed their side. I think we have 10% of the reservoir, so everybody came over to us. So economically it was great, but it put us a real strain on Colorado and made some of our counties nervous. So we're going to endeavor to do that. I know my staff probably got sick of hearing this, but I'm going to tell you my strategy for this is, and I'm going to make a bumper sticker, I just haven't yet, is manage to yes. You know, no's easy. So figure out a way to yes. And that's going to be our goal was our goal through this spring, was our goal through this summer, will be our goal through this fall, is we're going to manage to yes on hunting season and yes on getting people outside. We're not going to just stick our head in the sand and hope this goes away. So help us with that, and I'd appreciate that.
This is Emily, and I'd just like to tag on to that comment. And this might be a question for Assistant Director Versteeg, but I know that the agency is doing a lot of studies to try and understand the recreation impacts on big game. And I've hunted Unit 521 in the Southwest region for probably over 15 years now, and we've seen dramatic declines in mule deer and are, you know, coming up short with elk more frequently. And does the agency plan to kind of take a different angle this hunting season with these increased, which is overwhelming numbers, to kind of build in, you know, the impact of COVID on top of those studies? Is there a way to do that, or a plan to then maybe be able to organize around that for future funding sources and be able to put powerful numbers in front of non-consumptive users?
So I will
Hey, Emily, it's Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, this is Jeff. So in a direct way and indirect way, yeah, we're looking at all uses of the trails in those areas where we're doing the research, and all the different users of the trail. So to the extent that more people are going outdoors, more people are using those trails in the areas where we're doing those comparisons, the more we'll note that. One of the problems we will have, though, is we've been challenged trying to get baseline information historically, because every time we pick a place that doesn't have a trail or isn't one developed, and we want to see what's going on with wildlife in those areas before people start recreating there, before we can get going, the trails are put in and people are out there. So we have a little trouble with our baselines, but we will be able to certainly look at this year compared to last year, and we're just in the early phases of those projects. We got many years to go yet. So if this continues, we'll be able to look at that trajectory and correlate it to what the critters are doing.
Yeah, and Emily, to the second part is being able to take that story and put it in front of decision makers, put it in front of our recreation community, will be a key part to building broader, just broader awareness and support and conservation efforts.
Great. So I see that Mark Schofield's hand is also up. Mark, you want to go ahead?
Thanks. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
I want to follow up on this discussion of what to do with this swarm of new hunters and fishers that are coming in. And is it, the end of quality hunting, or is it an opportunity? I want to put a word in for it being an opportunity, since it's happening anyway. It's a chance to invite these people and guide them toward what experienced people know. What you can gather on media sources about how to go be successful as a big game hunter in Colorado. I think there's lots of good information there, but I think as soon as you step out of your truck, it's a whole different ball game. And so I'm aware of being open to helping people that I encounter out there, instead of being closed mouthed and saying, if I tell you where I go hunting, I have to kill you. That kind of I was here first and it's mine, and it's my secret or my family's secret. We may be past the time when there's room on the resource for that kind of attitude, because it belongs to voters. And if voters are busy feeling kind of negative attitude, they can vote against hunting and fishing as a use of public lands. So to me, the opportunity is help these people understand what the challenges, the risks, and the rewards are that you might not get by watching YouTube videos.
Sure.
I think that can be done in groups. I think it can also be done face to face as we're encountering people out fishing, out hunting. I'm remembering the old hug a hunter kind of approach that I'm not sure what the impacts of that were. I recall the discussion in previous roundtable meetings as that sort of morphs into the next version of how do we harness the power of these new people coming onto our landscape in terms of voting, in terms of money. I don't have an answer. I have it more as an open question. That's my take.
I appreciate that, Mark, and I think that is the open-ended question that we're all exploring. But I would absolutely agree with you. We've got a really critical and key opportunity in front of us.
Yeah, so Chloe, you've got your hand up. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, thanks. It's pretty similar to what Mark was just saying. I have also spent a little bit of time contemplating the upcoming hunting season and how it might look different this year, because but mostly what I'm concerned about is people not taking care of the environment or respecting it, because that's what I've been seeing a lot on my favorite hiking and outdoor trails, is that people who are new don't always understand the same like leave no trace principles. And I see a lot more trash, and like, granted, I always bring a trash bag in my day pack with me so I can pick stuff up, but like one person taking trash is, only does so much. And during hunting season, if we're going to see this not on these same defined trails through the community, it might be trash that's just left in the environment that never gets picked up. And so I guess my primary concern coming up this hunting season is just that there's going to be a lot of trash and a lot of environment damage caused by new hunters. I'm not trying to disparage them, just that maybe they've never been taught leave no trace principles, or maybe they just don't realize like the classic one, everyone talks about, oh, you can just leave a banana peel, like you can just throw it, and like that doesn't work. So I just hope that there's maybe some educational opportunities maybe made available before hunting season, so that and obviously we all do what we can in our communities with who we have, but that's my primary concern at this time.
I appreciate that feedback, Chloe, and I think you're absolutely correct. There's an opportunity for education, and we have, as an agency, we have a lot of material created. We also have been recently meeting with the tourism office and the director of tourism, as well as the Leave No Trace and outdoor rec office to talk exactly about this topic of how do we collectively use our statewide networks to help people understand what responsible recreation looks like. And we're going to be kicking off kind of a crowd challenge to hopefully help make some behavior changes and some action changes, rather than just a campaign saying I support recreation and responsible recreation, but start putting it as a bigger challenge of what did you do today or this week to help the impacts of recreation. So I'll make sure that Jody has that information as we start preparing it to give to everybody. But it's a challenge, and it's a concern that a lot of people are looking at, both from a municipal facet, a state facet, and a federal lands perspective.
Thanks, Lauren. All right, I see that Eric's got his hand up. Eric, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, this is more, I guess, the question for Lauren. Is there processes in place currently for distributing some of that information to people that we see as new hunters coming into the online system, where they get put into an email flow or something along those lines that distributes some of that information? And then secondly, you mentioned the apprenticeship program. Could you maybe explain that a little bit more? I'm not familiar with that program and how that works.
Absolutely, Eric. Two great questions. So we have an email listserv that we do put all of our hunters, anglers, and customers into. People have the opportunity to opt out. But also, I think for this group in particular, if you guys are okay with it, or if you are not already on like our press release listservs, we can make sure that you guys are getting all of the information the agency is putting out to help spread that word. Also, our social media channels is where we promote a lot of the content that we're addressing and putting out. So again, ways that I can certainly engage this group and any others who are interested to make sure that you're getting the information so that you can kind of spread that throughout your personal and business and respective conservation networks. As for the apprentice program, it was one that we implemented a few years ago in an effort to break down barriers for people to get into hunting. It's kind of the try before you buy experience. So an apprentice doesn't have to go through the formal hunter education process. They had, previous to this year, they had 1 year that they could hunt with a mentor. So they had to be in the field with that mentor for their entire hunt. To help really foster that experiential process, but then to also give them someone that they can kind of go under their proverbial wing. This year, because of COVID, it also opened up an opportunity to extend that apprentice option for 2 years. So people have an opportunity to hunt with somebody in the field prior to taking hunter education, and just really experience what hunting is about. Then what we do is follow that apprentice through their hunter education process, making sure that everybody then goes through and has the education and resources needed to continue their hunting experience. But it was just one more bridge to the new hunter who maybe didn't grow up in a hunting family or didn't have someone to help that process along. Just a way for us to meet new people and allow interested people to try hunting before they really made a full commitment.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. So Willie Kolaski, why don't you go ahead? You've got your hand up. And you are on mute.
All right, thanks, Jody. Thanks for the opportunity to contribute here. It's good to see you, Lauren. Good to see you, Director Prenslow and Ron. But listen, as I sit here and think of or listen to everyone's comments, I know there's actions being taken place and people are actively working this problem right now and have been working it. But doggone it, as I sit here, I think, you know, arithmetic and mathematics count in this problem. It's not going to go away. We all know what the demographics are supposed to look like for our state. You know, I know it's out there, but by the time we hit 2050, we're going to have a lot of people in this state, and we're talking about growing new hunters and growing new campers and growing new anglers. And so we're creating these mathematic numbers to add to the problem, and we're welcoming people in because we like their money, but it's going to continue, if not get worse. And I just wrote some notes down here. I think one option, Lauren, maybe, is to tap into some of these conservation groups that are out there. We have a ton in this state and across the country, but and I don't think they're used. And I'm talking about Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Mule Deer Foundation, Pheasants Forever, National Wild Turkey Federation, Trout Unlimited, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, Safari Club International, Dallas Safari Club, all these organizations who have a finger, if not a foot, into the outdoor recreation, hunting, fishing, trapping, camping situation. And I know when I sit on the NWTF state board, and I know when we have board meetings, all we talk about is raising money, you know, and most of it goes to Habitat, but we never touch on this situation. And if we could have a biannual, not biennial, but a biannual meeting twice a year, maybe, with the presidents of those organizations. Sorry, there's a jet going over. But the presidents of those organizations and ask for their help in this situation, to ask for their help with population growth and trash out there, and our restrooms not being used properly out there, with stuff being thrown down the toilet that shouldn't be there, and habitat projects, and the hunting and fishing pressure that's gonna increase as time goes on, and fishing and hunting recruitment and how that adds to the problem. Yeah, we want these young kids involved, but if they stay involved, it's going to add to the numbers problem. And I'm not smart enough to know all the unknown, unseen leverage opportunities that might be out there, but I think there's so many people out there who could be helping CPW with this problem if it was a dot on their radar screen where they could talk about it to their individual. And unfortunately, they're individual and they're stovepiped, siloed organizations. We all work individually to try to help CPW with habitat projects and things like that, but we don't work like this to help CPW. We all work like this in our own lanes. I just think there's an opportunity that's missed out there that we could be tapping into, and having some of these national and international organizations who exist at our state level help us out. Now I'll shut up.
I appreciate the feedback, Willie, and I think you're absolutely correct. it's a network impact model that we're going to have to employ.
Thanks. So Trent Peterson, you've also got your hand up. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just kind of one of my thoughts through all this thing. Right now, obviously, everything in the world is everything's changing. It's like we're in a time of change and kind of unprecedented. We don't really know what we're looking at, and there's going to be policy changes. And one thing I've realized is, as sportsmen, we kind of get used to one thing, and change is hard for us. We get kind of stuck in our ways, and so, you know, it's like, oh man, they reduced the bag limit of, you know, pintails or something, or now they have a new, you know, a bounty on pike in this reservoir. So things change, but they change for a reason. And I think the one thing that I love CPW as an agency, but I think the one thing that they could really improve on is getting the information out to the public and making it understandable for those people. I think the general public, sometimes there's information out there that to someone who has maybe gone to school for wildlife biology or something like that, it's fairly accessible, easy to understand information, but may not to be to the normal person. They don't understand why you have a bounty for their favorite pike in their favorite reservoir. And so I think as we're going forward and going through all these transitions and these changes, being able to keep people in it and excited about it is really having them understand why those things are happening, and that there are professionals that have dedicated their lives to, you know, these issues, and that they're not just doing it because they're biased, and that, you know, it's like, oh, this biologist wants to see more smallmouth bass, and so, you know, I just think that's really important in avoiding a lot of the frustration that some sportsmen feel, and I've even seen push them completely out of the sport, you know. So that to me is a pretty big factor in the whole thing.
I appreciate that feedback, Trent. In working on plain language is a key component to communicating with the general public, especially about very complex topics like wildlife management. So appreciate that feedback.
All right, Ron Goodrich, you got something you'd like to add?
Yeah, based on Willie, a follow-up to Willie's groups that he asked, how are the other non-hunters, other recreationals participating in any of the things that comes to the trash, the not tearing up the land or anything? What are those groups, or are any of them participating in either financially or even non-financial in ways to keep things from happening that we see happening?
You know, Rod, I think that's a really good question, and I might lean on my regional counterparts. You know, there are recreation conservation partnerships that are established in many of our regions. There are efforts that Jody will talk about with the regional partnerships that we're trying to lift up. Each of our individual recreation organizations has a part to play. You know, how big they're playing in their respective networks, I think, depends on that organization. Through our Partners in the Outdoors program, we again push information. We've begun asking our partners, we need your help. These are key messages that we need to get out. As Doug mentioned, we have a regular meeting with our federal partners to make sure that we're all managing the COVID impacts collectively. So as we look at this responsible recreation campaign, they are going to be a huge part of that. The outdoor recreation industry is one that I'm targeting particularly. with this campaign to see how we can activate them to the benefit of our resources. What we talk a lot about is the foundation, the lands, the water, the wildlife. Once we degrade those, we can't get them back. And that's a key part of the proactive stewardship of this effort. So we're on the forefront, at least with COVID impacts, but it has been a long-term conversation of how we use our non-hunting and non-angling consumer partners, that network of people, how we also get them to understand their investment and the need for their investment in these resources, not just the recreation opportunity that they come and go with. So it's an ongoing, and then forward speaking, one that we're targeting very specifically.
Well, I just thought it was, because there's many different groups other than hunters and anglers use the outdoors, and now with the big money being passed on through to the National Park Service, BLM, Forest Service, some of those groups, members of them be willing to assist in trail maintenance, trail repair, building maintenance, building repair, and some of the damage, fixing some of the damage that's being done.
Absolutely. And I think there's a key opportunity. Director Prenslow and I've talked, and Heather can chime in on this. Outside of Great Outdoors Colorado, CPW is one of the largest granting organizations in the state of Colorado for both conservation and recreation projects. So there is a key opportunity for not only CPW, but the entire state to step forward as leaders in managing the balance of recreation and conservation.
Yeah, and Lauren, I appreciate you bringing up our outdoor regional partnerships, and I do want to touch on that briefly. But first, I see Kim that you've got your hand up. Would you like to add something, Kim?
Yeah, I'll add on to what Ron's question. I'm a member of Thunder Mountain Wheelers here in Delta County, and the organization's been in effect for 25 years, and over that 25 years, this club has put over $2 million on the ground maintaining trails on the Forest Service and the BLM. And that money has come from CPW grants. And so the motor user vehicle registration that we pay every year for our ATVs, that money gets returned in the form of grants. And like I say, our club has leveraged that tremendously, and also the club in Grand Junction has done the same thing. Mm-hmm. Between the two clubs, we actually have 4 trail dozers up until this year. We're running continuously maintaining trails. In fact, I got a grant last year through CBW to replace one bridge and to repair another one, so there isn't the resource damage on the creeks. So, and then on top of that, this particular club, we also have adopted over 200 miles of trails. That's the ones, we're the ones going out there cleaning all this deadfall off of these trails on Grand Mesa and Compadre, not the Forest Service. They don't have the manpower to do it. They rely on us as a partner to do that for them. We also pick up loads of trash, and we try to do it during the hunting seasons, because yes, there is a lot. And just a couple of years ago, when we had the wet fall, our trails got trashed by the hunters. And so our dozers worked overtime last year just repairing all that damage. And so there are these partnerships out there and organizations that do try to help the resource, because if we didn't do it, I can guarantee you the Forest Service and the BLM won't. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the budget to do it. And that's why they've relied on us to do their work for them.
And I appreciate that, Kim. I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's something that this group in our motorized community, the boating community, it's something that we should all be really proud of, is that not only the financial investment that we're annually putting back into these resources through multiple channels, but then you're dedicating your time on top of it. And I think it's an opportunity for us to engage others to also invest and give back to the resources that they're enjoying.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heather Dugan, it looks like you've got something to add too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, the LWCF funds that Colorado Parks and Wildlife uses are generally right now used for trail maintenance grants, just like was being discussed. And we intend to continue overseeing how those grants are recommended through the statewide trails committee. And we always make sure that from the very beginning, we've got input from our local area wildlife managers and DWMs in terms of wildlife impacts. So that's definitely something that is on the forefront of our priorities in CPW.
Great, thanks, Heather. So I'm just going to quickly add, talk about a regional partnerships initiative. I mean, recognizing the value of the work that you're doing and the value of the work of partners across the state, CPW really is looking at how to support partners and to support more formalized coalitions at the community level around the state, and really thinking kind of strategically about building coalitions that have strong representation from outdoor recreation interests and industry, as well as land managers and local government, as well as our conservation interests, and making sure that our sportspersons are represented, as well as those who are concerned about wildlife habitat are a key part of those conversations. And so that's just an initiative that we're working on and putting some time into, and you'll be hearing more about that in the future. I don't want to go into too much detail because we are at 6:40, and I want to make sure that we've got some time on the agenda for you all to talk about regional caucus meetings that have taken place. And then also if you've got issues you want to bring up on our time here tonight. So yeah, so I think I'll wrap it up at that. And that was a really good discussion and conversation, and really appreciate you all chiming in. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. So for Roundtable, I think I'm going to look at Willie Kolaski, because I know that the Southeast region had a caucus meeting. And I don't know if you or Ron or someone from the Southeast region wants to sort of kick off our roundtable discussion, giving the quick highlights from your Southeast caucus meeting.
Let me just say, Jody, that was my last meeting, and I am done after 4 years and have moved up to this level. So I'll defer that to Ron Goodrich. I don't want to surprise him with it, but I can help out if he doesn't want to, but he's the guy now.
Okay. Yeah, we had a good meeting. I was a Zoom meeting and then broadcast on Facebook Live. We had about 8,400 views. It was 2 hours long. There was a good agenda. That they spoke about the gun ranges, the elk or the deer overpasses that are being put in, the wildlife terrestrial biologists and the fish biologists spoke. Brett Ackerman talked about the new Fisher's Peak and some work going on down there, and maybe potential for some 2020 hunt. So if they get the park opens on, make sure we get hunting, since a lot of people don't know, and this is one of the issues I raised, is that the sportsmen and paid for 7.7 million of that purchase. That's never been highlighted, with the exception of one time when Director Prenzo gave a speech on the Colorado Outdoors Committee. The rest of the time, it's never been mentioned by the governor. It's never been mentioned by CPW in the direct stuff that I saw. They had in some written stuff, and Director Prenzo has said it, but there's been a lot of lack of information about that. And I think it's important that the sportsmen know that they paid for a big portion of that. In essence, they were a team member in that, and that was not let on or has not been publicized. And one more thing is that they talked about the issues with the state wildlife areas being required, license purchases there. That's important. And I think it's, especially for this group, since we're all people who pay for that, that we need to make sure that that stays that way, because that's what those pieces of property were purchased for. And that, you know, there's a large percentage of people out there that want to use something for nothing. These are the biggest complainers, and if we don't stay on top of it, we're going to lose that. I urge the members on this roundtable to at least listen to the commission meeting in September, because this is going to be brought up again, and we don't want to let it backslide. It would be not good for the sportsmen, because if they lose on this one, the next thing, it's just one after another. So you need to stay on top of things. And that about covered the meeting.
Thanks, Ron. Does anyone from the Southeast want to add anything?
Yeah, I sure will, Jody. Thank you very much, and appreciate these gentlemen who have spoken. They did a great job in running the Southeast Caucus meeting. It was interesting to do it virtually online, and you know, we had a great meeting that was actually quite a bit more interactive than you might have thought it was. I thought it went very well. We got a lot of information, had a lot of good discussion there, and so just wanted to say that I appreciate our representatives, especially our outgoing representative Willie Kolaski, who's joined the statewide group now, who also helped run that meeting. He did a great job. So I don't think Larry McCormick's out there with us today, but those three gentlemen did a very nice job.
Great, thanks. Are there other regions that have a caucus meeting that they would like to report on or share anything about?
Hey, Jody, I just jump in real quick. From the Southwest, we really talked about very similar issues. There was probably a couple more, whether we give a short wolf update or the West Slope Lion Plan. I think the most important part of our meeting was to try to get new caucus members in, and we did. I'm starting to receive some of those requests to be part of that caucus. So hopefully here, in the next meeting, we'll be able to introduce a couple more caucus members. So other than that, appreciate it.
Great, thanks. And for folks who are new, the caucus meetings are open to the public, and we try to have one per region. And those are opportunities for sort of anyone to show up and talk to CPW and bring up issues. And then when they elect delegates, those delegates are then invited to come to these meetings and share what they're hearing on the ground in their region and the issues that came up at those meetings. And, with COVID and everything moving virtually, I know not all the regions have had caucus meetings, but we're certainly looking at how best to continue to have that engagement with sportsmen in the regions, even though we can't meet with folks in person. So I don't know, does anyone, with that, I'll just open it up. Does anyone have any other items or issues or things that they're hearing about from your networks that you want to bring up during this time with leadership? We've got about 12 more minutes on tonight's call. So this is kind of your time if you want to ask questions or raise issues with CPW staff. And Willie, I see that your hand is up. Go ahead.
Jody, one thing I like to make sure that the rest of the roundtable people know that the Parks and Wildlife has lots and lots of committees that enhance or try to bring in, like the Wildlife Committee, the Habitat Partnership Committees. They can become active in there, or they can participate in those meetings. They don't have to be on those committees, but they can still participate if they, in the area that they're living in. Then they understand what those habitat partnerships do and how they benefit wildlife, how they benefit agriculture. And then the Habitat Stamp Committee and everything that they go through and the dollars that they have to spend. I think the members of this committee need to understand what's available there. They may have somebody who would want to apply for some of those. And it's kind of up to us to make sure that our constituents know what's available.
Thanks, Ron. Willie, you've got your hand up.
Hey, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything on tomorrow's agenda you want us to think about or focus on and be ready to talk about specifically tomorrow?
Sure, that's a good question. So tomorrow night it's kind of a continuation of this meeting. And so it will be new topics that will come up, and some of those topics include talking about our state wildlife areas and the new license requirement for accessing state wildlife areas. In addition, we'll have our regional managers give some updates, and you'll hear a little bit about what's going on in each of the regions. And getting to Ron's point about the habitat stamp, there are habitat projects that have recently been approved, and JT Kolaski is going to talk a bit about those and about that effort, so you can learn more about that. And then again, there will also be open roundtable time like this. So, you know, we really appreciate the opportunity to have a back and forth with you all and to hear from you about the issues that you're concerned about or care about or want to bring up. And so it's important to us to make sure we sort of have this open time too for you guys to bring stuff up. I see that Eric's got his hand up. You want to go ahead, Eric?
Sure. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just a quick question. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate for the director or maybe it was Heather that was on the line. With the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act, is there any opportunity for additional dollars to CPW through the LWCF and, you know, through grants or other channels? Is any of that available to the agency, or is it strictly just license fees that you guys have access to?
So that's a great question. And there will likely be additional funds available directly to CPW for granting purposes. And so we're having conversations already with some of our other stakeholders and Doug Vilsack in particular, just so that we can figure out what this looks like.
This is Doug. Just to kind of add to that, I mean, there'll be money coming directly to the state for conservation and things like that. But there's also a great opportunity for funding that will come directly through the Forest Service for acquisitions. And something we've been talking with the Forest Service about is, again, trying to prioritize some of those properties that you know would be great for us to acquire to provide additional access to federal lands or to open up kind of landlocked properties, those types of things. So there's going to be a significant amount of more resources kind of through that LWCF acquisition process with the Forest Service too. So it's really, really exciting stuff.
Is there pretty stringent language in terms of how those funds can be used in the fund itself. I'm not familiar with the kind of the back end processes of it.
For the Forest Service funds, which is a huge amount of it, it is pretty open. I mean, it's acquisitions, so it's mainly acquisitions, adding additional federal properties. Heather can talk maybe a little bit more about the state funds. I know we've always have had challenges, making sure or spending those LWCF funds on a state level, because essentially what happens is you have to draw a box around whatever parcel you're investing those funds into, be it recreation infrastructure or an acquisition. And whenever you do something on that property in the future, you essentially have these additional restrictions and requirements. So we are pretty careful about where we draw those lines around properties, because obviously it just kind of inhibits our ability to do some things in the future or makes it more challenging. So, but it is a little bit of a different story with the Forest Service funds. Those are primarily for acquisitions and probably some great opportunities there to think about. Again, like some of those landlocked parcels or areas, that we really want to get more access. So.
Yeah, and Doug is spot on with the funds that come directly to CPW. So we want to make sure that there isn't going to be a future conversion of use, if at all possible, for any lands or projects that we spend LWCF funds on, because if there is a conversion, then we are on the hook to find a like property in the future. And we've had to do that in a couple of different cases in the past 10 or so years. So we're not tied to any specific narrow focus. We have a lot of latitude in what we can spend those funds on.
Great, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Garcia, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. So I failed to mention when I introduced myself, I'm also a GOCO board member. And I say that because I'm always open to emails or phone calls. My contact information is available to anybody in this caucus if you want to talk about issues with CPW or GOCO. I wanted to reach out. Eric, I saw from Wisconsin. I began my hunting and fishing life in Wisconsin. So sometime maybe offline, we can talk a little bit about Wisconsin. But really, I wanted to answer Willie's question about tomorrow night. Willie, what I would appreciate as a commissioner in talking about what we might want to look at, we've got a pretty full agenda, but if you go onto the CPW website, you will see that there is a rulemaking notice, which outlines what we're going to be talking about at our commission meeting, September 2nd and 3rd. And if people would maybe just take a glance at that, it might give you some ideas, because I can tell you the input from the people on this caucus to us as commissioners for those commission meetings is extremely important. So if there's anything on there that you want to talk about tomorrow night, or again, offline, feel free at any time to give me a call or shoot me an email. So, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. So we're pretty close to 7 p.m. and I think that was a good close, and thinking about tomorrow night, reflecting on Commissioner Garcia's suggestion. So with that, I'll turn it out there. Does anyone want to try to add something in the last couple minutes? I don't see any hands up. So with that, maybe I'll just say, huge thanks again for joining us, for being patient as we found a new meeting date, for taking this time in your evening to be with us and spending more time on Zoom, which I know a lot of us are doing a lot of already. It is really great to see you all. And we will be back here again tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. So you all have the link and you're experts now at Zoom. So We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See y'all tomorrow.